Good evening. It is time for today's Tax Talk. I'm your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. It is Wednesday, August 31st, the year of our Lord 2022. Today, eBay came out warning people about the 1099Ks that are coming. I've been warning about this for months. I've been warning about it since the Rescue Act, which was last year, about what to expect, what's going to happen. People kept telling me I'm wrong. I don't know it, but here it comes. The 1099Ks. That's what we're going to talk about today. Won't you join us? Okay, well, welcome to the program. I'm your host, as I said. Okay, so we're talking about the 1099 cash apps. They call it the cash app rule, and that's kind of where we are. eBay came out today and was warning people. Hey, if you do $600 or more, we're gonna block your account if you don't give us your Social Security number, because we have to send you a 1099K. And you say, wait a minute. I'm not a business. It's not a good or service. Well, that's something you'll have to figure out with the IRS, isn't it? That's what I've been warning all along, because you're going to have to figure it out with the IRS, because and I'll tell you, we'll talk a little bit about these 1099Ks because I have a lot of experience with it. Many people have run into this problem. So let's go into the story. This is a fairly long story, but I think it's good, so we're going to get into it. Why new IRS rules will be an absolute disaster for casual eBay users. And you can put in their Venmo, you can put in their PayPal, you can put in their, whatever you want, Cash App. I know some people say, well, some of these Cash App, I think, is the one. Said people say it's not taxable, and we'll see. The whole point of these is to track people who say they're not in business but are. So just because you say it's not a business, that doesn't mean you're not going to get a 1099K. You have to explain it to the IRS. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. Maybe it makes sense. Yeah. Let's see that. Okay, here we go. As the price of gas, food, and rent soars, Americans let's call it Elisa, scan their closets and garages in a modern-day version of rummaging under the couch cushions for spare change. I talked to a woman the other day, told me she sold some clothes, made about $6,000 last year. Is that a profit? Should she pay tax on $6,000? Those clothes probably ran her $12,000 more. Used clothes aren't worth that much. The 38-year-old preschool teacher turned speech-language pathologist will find something she doesn't need from the back of her closet, snap a few pictures, and put it up for grabs on an online marketplace. If she's lucky, it will sell, and she'll ship it off to a new home in exchange for extra money for bills. I'm just trying to sell old things that I've accumulated over the years, like used clothes or items that probably will be going in the landfill. She enjoys the extra money and gets a kick out of helping people rediscover discontinued items that aren't available anymore, like a favorite pair of pants from a store that went out of business. As the years go on, those kinds of things become harder and harder to find. So it's kind of fun to have a unicorn, she says, who says she's earned about $2,000 from e-commerce sales this last year. Almost all the transactions are less than she originally paid for the items, but she enjoys the dopamine high for getting money for her old stuff as she transitions into a new career. But she and many other casual resellers might soon call it quits on their reselling hobby due to a new tax reporting requirement. So I think it's important that they say it's a tax reporting requirement, not a new tax. And that's what the IRS keeps. Well, it's not a new tax. What are you talking about? It's not a new tax. It's true, but it is a new tax reporting requirement that appears to be a new tax. So that gets into it. Let's get into it. They're worried they'll be forced to hire an accountant, and they will, or even end up paying the government more taxes than they actually owe. That's probably true. And they make less than $400,000 a year. Go figure. As part of the Amercian Rescue Plan, Third-party e-commerce platforms like eBay, Poshmark, these others, will now have to issue 1099-K tax form to anyone with a total revenue of more than $600 on their websites. In the past, the platforms only had gave tax reporting forms to sellers who operated at a larger scale, those who brought in to $20,000 in revenue and had more than 200 sales in 1 year. You're probably in business if that's what you're doing. Chances are. A 1099-K is a tax form now common in the gig economy, reporting payments from third parties to people who aren't employees at businesses like Uber, DoorDash, and PayPal. The lower threshold will give the Internal Revenue Service additional oversight on online transactions and prevent businesses and individuals from skipping out on their taxes for profit that may have been making. While people like this woman aren't making much of a profit, the sale of secondhand items can be big business for part-time or full-time resellers who build six-figure careers by sourcing items at thrift stores or purchasing in bulk from closeout retail sales. Individuals have always been legally required to declare their profits on secondhand marketplaces, but there's been little oversight for accounts with revenues under $20,000 until now. I wonder why that is. You think is it really worth the IRS's trouble to go after people making less than $20,000? Because remember, that's just what the sales were. That's not the profit on those sales. The profit, there might not even be a profit on those sales. Most likely there aren't, if that's like this woman who's selling things that she overpaid for. But here's the thing. Oh, they're going to talk about it, so I'm going to let that story talk for itself. Last year, the Department of Treasury announced a need for a more robust attack on the tax gap. I've been telling you that's what they've been saying for years. The difference between taxes owed and the amount actually collected. The government estimates it to be about $600 billion. Depends what the estimate is. I've shown you on the show, some estimates are $200 billion. Some go as high as $1 trillion, depending on what point they're trying to make. The Department of Treasury projects greater oversight of third-party transactions will generate an additional $460 billion in revenue in 10 years. So that's $46 billion a year, really, from this woman that sells clothes at a loss. The lower 1099-K reporting threshold comes at a time when the government shared the half of the tax gap is believed to stem from situations where there is little or no information available to the IRS to verify the truthfulness of tax filings, such as when self-employed or contract-based work. It's relatively straightforward to assume gig work like driving a car for Uber or shopping for groceries on Instacart is putting taxable income in someone's pocket. However, e-commerce platforms don't know if transactions on their websites are actually profitable. If someone sells a pre-owned item for less money than they originally purchased it for, it isn't a taxable event, regardless of how much revenue is generated. With no way to decipher which sales are taxable income and which aren't, the platforms are required to distribute 1099-K forms to all sellers whose total revenue is higher than $600. And this has been my argument all along, right? It's not that you're going to get taxed or you're going to have to pay tax on it. You're going to have to account for it. You're going to get a 1099-K, and you're going to have to figure it out. And here's what's going to happen. People don't know what the 1099-K is, and they're not going to report it on their tax returns. And so then they're going to get a CP 2000. And in that IRS letter, it's going to say, here's what you said, and here's what we said. And then you're going to have to prove to them what you paid for that item. Because remember, this again, the 1099-K doesn't show you a profit like a 1099-B does from your broker. It just shows the money that went through the account. So if you had rebates, so let's say I bought I have a bike and I sold it for $325, and I got the $325. The guy returns it. I give him the $325 back. I sell it again for $325. Now I have $650 in revenue, and that's what is going to be reported, $650. But wait, you say, I only got $325. Well, you have to explain that to the IRS, why you only have $325. And wait, you say, I bought that bike for $700. I lost money. Do you have the receipt for the bike? Oh, you don't. Well, then you're going to have to pay. And if you don't respond to the CP2000, well, then you pay on the whole $650. That's the way it works. Resellers making a profit and operating as a sole proprietorship can file a Schedule C, a tax form that reports business expenses and losses. However, there's little direction for non-business sellers who aren't making income. eBay reports that 63% of people who sell pre-owned goods on their platform are selling items from around the house. The confusion and the complexity start right there, Senior Director of Governmental Relations for eBay said, to the Daily Dot, who added that the platform has already received countless questions from casual sellers confused about what documentation they need to have on hand to prove to the IRS that they didn't profit from the online sales. In many cases, sellers purchased the items years ago and have no longer have the receipts. Well, how are you going to prove it? You're not. So it's all income. How do you show a cost basis for a used item? This is something that the IRS has provided no guidance on, he said. We believe that goods and the sale of used and pre-owned goods were really an unintended consequence and an overlooked piece of the equation. No, it isn't overlooked. They knew exactly what they were doing. This will impact millions of people now on eBay alone, and tens of millions of people when they put together all the platforms, payment processors, all these other types of services. As there is no longer a minimum number of sales in the new reporting threshold, there is little to differentiate casual sellers from those who operate on the platforms as a business. A casual seller might have paid $899 plus tax for an iPhone 13, but opted to upgrade a year later. They might sell the iPhone 13 on eBay for $600, and it will receive a 1099K for crossing the new threshold. However, they technically lost $200 on the sale. If they simply include a 1099K, which only reports gross sales, in their annual income, they'll be taxed as a profit $600 from eBay, when in reality they lost money. People who receive a Form 1099K must pay employment tax, self-employment tax of 15.3%, in addition to the income tax. The self-employment tax alone on the $600 comes out to be $91.80. To avoid paying taxes for selling their old things at a loss, casual sellers will have to report how much they lost through selling their pre-owned items on a Schedule D, a form for taxpayers to typically compute capital gains and losses. They'll need to keep good records also about how much they originally spent for the item, shipping costs, fees paid to eBay, and expenses for packing and shipping supplies. Many casual sellers feel they'll need to hire a tax professional to properly navigate the process, which would cost a few $100s, if you're lucky. Retired mother Ms. Wood doesn't have it in her fixed budget to hire a CPA for her online sales. She spends her free time on eBay, Poshmark, and Facebook Marketplace selling her now married son's belongings from his room, as well as clothes from her closet that she never wound up to wearing. I'm not doing enough business to have somebody do my bookkeeping for me, she said. It's a part-time hobby right now to help me clean my house because I need to downsize. While she'll continue selling this year, she's anxious about navigating the 1099K form she'll receive. If it's too complicated to manage on her own or significantly raises her taxes, she plans on quitting. E-commerce platforms are bracing to lose millions of sales due to the new 1099K reporting requirements. eBay commissioned a survey of small sellers at the start of the year and reported that 69% of the survey respondents said that they are likely to stop selling online or sell less online based on the new requirements. The survey also found a disproportionate impact on the communities of color, because that's always important. That's the first thing we got to look at. Hurricane hits. Women and children hurt worse. It reported that 60% of African Americans and Hispanics who sell under $20,000 a year on online platforms do so to help pay for necessary expenses, compared to 47% of the representatives sample. That's just silly. Carol Craig, a 70-year-old retired divorcee, is that what we're supposed to call him? Said she's giving up on her hustle of selling vintage glassware and Corningware online to make money to exist every month while living on Social Security. She's now in the process of giving her eBay inventory to her daughter, concerned about managing the tax implications with their Social Security. What am I really getting out of it, she asked. Not much. By the time you figure out what you sold and what you paid for it and how much it will cost you to ship and all that, it's really not worth it. It makes it difficult for anybody who's trying to put a few extra dollars in their pocket to be able to buy food for their family or put gas in their car to get to work. This spring, eBay founded a lobbying organization called the Coalition for 1099K Fairness, which united eBay and a bunch of these others, and in an effort to repeal or modify the lower reporting threshold. I've actually been saying all along that once people hit this next year, there's going to be an uproar, and they're not going to be able to handle it. And I think it's going to have to change, especially if the Republicans get in charge. I think it's going to have to change. It's not. Again, it's like every dollar that goes through, you can't skip. Well, it's not right. It's illegal. So I sell they're not making money. They're losing money by selling things that they already have. But they can't even do that without the IRS with their hand out. The group aims to protect casual online sellers and micro businesses from unfair tax and privacy burdens. We thought it was really important to make it official and have a united mechanism to show policymakers the scope of the impact. It's so important who is being impacted, and it's not wealthy, sophisticated taxpayers. A lot of people who sell online because they need the extra money. The Coalition for 1099 Fairness, Fairness, has political support from both sides of the aisle. Haggerty, who is a Senate Banking Committee, introduced a Stop the Nosy Obsession with Online Payments Snoop Act. I've talked about that on this show before. A bill to revoke the provision requiring third-party platforms to report business transactions of more than $600. In March, a group of Democratic lawmakers, and then there's a list of them, introduced legislation to raise the threshold for 1099K reporting from $600 to $5,000, a modification the Coalition of 1099 Fairness supports. Well, any raise would be better, but isn't it better at $20,000? Because then you rinse out all of these, $5,000, you can sell things and make $5,000. That's not a lot of money. Raising the reporting threshold will ensure sellers of used goods are not subject to burdensome or confusing reporting requirements, which could result in overpayment as well as ineligibility for certain tax benefits. According to eBay, a $5,000 threshold would significantly reduce the number of 1099K forms distributed from non-taxable events. We need to take away the pain for the vast majority of people who are going to unnecessarily receive this. But some resellers support greater tax oversight on eBay platforms. Mark Toe is a reseller and licensed CPA who operates a YouTube channel about e-commerce tax filings. I think he'll make money on this. He has encountered many profitable resellers who weren't aware that they need to file income tax. So let's get everybody. Some people he knows, some people that might have. He feels that e-commerce platforms will have to make a major bookkeeping adjustments due to the new legislation, which is partly fueling their lobbying efforts. It's going to be one big burden on companies like eBay, who now have to process maybe millions more tax forms and send them out to their people who are using their platform. eBay announced in August that they have partnered with the Tax Act, a DIY tax preparation service, and launched a tax information center for eBay sellers to help untangle the impact of the new threshold of Form 1099K and provide information and support to file taxes. In the meantime, many casual sellers are keeping a watchful eye on their accounts as they cautiously approach the $600 threshold, contemplating if the extra paperwork will be worth it. It may indeed be easier to shift through color couch cushions. Okay, so that's what they say. So here we are. I have another story here. I'm not going to get into it because I'm running out of time. I don't like to go much more than 20 minutes. So what happened? eBay turns to YouTube to share tax message. So there's eBay has a YouTube out. It's on the link below. You can find it there. There's another story. I don't know what's going on here. Used PayPal or Venmo, you may owe taxes. This is a new story. It's very short. Again, don't have time to do it, but I really wanted to read that last story because I thought it was very good about this is. Again, another link in this story. So that's what we'll do. Again, I've been warning about this all along. I've been telling people this is what's going to happen. You're going to get a 1099K. The 1099K is not going to be accurate reflecting, and you're going to have to account for it. And if you don't account for it, you're going to pay more taxes. And, even on this, this example where they had $600, right? Almost 100 of that was going to go to self-employment tax. I mean, and that's not even a tax on the 600 that you may or may not. Maybe it's another 20%. That's another $120. So of the 600, 320 is going to go to taxes. Is that? And do you make more than? Is that more than $400,000 for people? Is that where they're going to squeeze out the $400 billion over 10 years? Is that where it's going to come from? I think we all have to ask that question. So anyway, thanks so much for watching us here today. I get this really riles me up because I think it's a terrible state of affairs. I've been saying so all along that I think it's a terrible state of affairs and unfair to people who really aren't making any money on it and shouldn't have to pay tax, shouldn't have to report it because of the couple that won't. It's our greedy government. That's what it's all about. It's our greedy government. Well, it's a tax cheats. Is that woman a tax cheat? Really? It just doesn't make any sense. Remember, I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe, share, get this information out there. Remember, most stories are tax stories. How do they get the money? How are they going to spend it? And what impact is it going to have on you? And that's what we talk about here every day, and we need your help to get the word out. And if you have an IRS problem, if you're fighting the IRS and you don't know what to do, first thing you should do, get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Go to freeirsbook.com, freeirsbook.com. Get your free copy of Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. We will ask you to pay for the shipping and handling, but otherwise the book is free. And the bonuses that are included in the book. So go to freeirsbook.com. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Out.